Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Birchmeyer, and I am the Director of Operations at Iowa Wind and Solar. I want to welcome you all to today's webinar, and I hope it is useful. Before we get started, I want to go over a few things about the platform we're using today. If you've never used Crowdcast, there is a couple different ways for you to communicate with me during this presentation. The first is down at the bottom of your screen. You should see a red button that says submit a question. Anything that you want me to address, go ahead and throw that in there. I will be keeping an eye on that during the presentation. So if there's any clarifying questions, anything that you're confused about while I'm speaking, throw those questions in there right away and I will try to address during the presentation. The more involved ones, I might wait till the end, sort of play it by ear. I see that I've already got a few questions in there, which is awesome. I think that a lot of what we're covering today is going to address those, but if you have questions or they haven't been answered, I will definitely go through those ones we've already gotten at the end of the presentation. If you are joining us via Facebook Live, welcome. I will be checking Facebook for comments at the end of the presentation, so I will try to address your questions over there as well. The other communication option we have right here inside of Crowdcast is over on your right. There is a chat box. This is for comments, general chatter, anything like that. With one word of warning there, I may not be able to keep up with that during the presentation, so if you want to make sure my eyes are on it, go ahead and submit the question down at the bottom. Okay, so we have a pretty quick presentation here. So we can go ahead and get started. Before we jump in, there are a couple things that I want to define just to make sure we're all on the same page here. First up is net metering. So I'm going to be talking a lot about that today. So in short, it is basically just a retail rate credit of kilowatt hours that you overproduce from distributed generation. What that means practically is for solar, the solar window is much, much stronger in the summer than it is in the winter here. So most arrays will produce much more power during the summer than the winter. What this means is that you can produce 130 to 150% of your consumption during the summer and then send that power back to the grid. Alliant will credit your bill at a retail rate for those kilowatt hours that you've produced. And then in January or February, when your solar array is only producing 60%, say, of your consumption, you can use up those credits that you got during the summer. So it is a really, really great policy. The state of Iowa mandates that the investor-owned utilities in Iowa, which are Alliant Energy and Mid-American Energy, have this policy. And it's absolutely wonderful. In most cases, that allows solar customers to offset 100% of their electric bill by using this policy, aside from your meter fee, but it's usually very minimal. A couple other acronyms that I want to throw out there, you might hear me talking about. One is DG, which means distributed generation. This is just any type of power that is produced away from, say, a power plant. So customer-owned solar arrays, wind turbines, anything like that is going to be considered distributed generation if it's hooked into the grid. And finally, the IUB. This is the Iowa Utilities Board. They are the regulating body governing utilities in Iowa. So, fairly simple. Okay, so today we are going to cover 4 things. 1, the history of and the intentions behind the upcoming changes that we're seeing by Alliant Energy. Where we're currently at, the current state of the changes, how those changes are going to impact Alliant customers, and then our timeline, what the expected timeline is for these changes. So first up, history of TF 2016-0321, the net billing pilot tariff. So this is the official name for all of this stuff that we're going to be talking about today. It was originally introduced by the IUB last summer to encourage the development of distributed generation in the state. So really, really good intentions here. And we are going to see some good results come out of this pilot project, but a few bad ones too, which we're going to get into. The IUB asked Mid-American and Alliant Energy, those two investor-owned utilities, to submit pilot projects that would encourage more distributed generation in Iowa. There has been a lot of back and forth since that original call by the IUB, so there's been a lot of revisions to these bills in the past 6 months or so. Where we are currently at in the Alliant tariff. So we're seeing 4 major changes to the policy, their net billing policy versus what they currently have. First up is a really, really good thing. They're going to allow all customers to be eligible for net metering. This is a change over the current policy because it allows a lot more larger customers. So, you know, your industrial, your manufacturing plants that previously, large consumers of energy that previously weren't eligible are now going to be eligible for net metering. So we are happy to see that. It's also going to change from a system of perpetual net metering to a system of annual net metering. This just means that previously, under today's policy, the current policy, your credits, if you had overproduction credits, those would carry on forever. So you would just keep having those, they'd roll through year after year after year, you could have those credits. Now what they've done is you're gonna have an annual cash out date. So in either January or April, all solar customers are going to want to pick April for sure. If you have any credits left over that you haven't used, those will be cashed out and you'll receive a check from Alliant for those credits. They won't be cashed out at retail rate. Instead, you'll be paid at the utility's avoided cost rate. That just means that the amount they pay for power from their supplier is how much they'll pay you for the power. It's usually between 2 to 3 cents, but that does fluctuate. There is also a provision with this bill that you'd actually only receive 50% of your credits, and the other half would be donated to needy customers. In general, this change doesn't affect too much because for the most part, you're going to want to be sizing your system so you will run out of credits before that cash out period. So it's not really a major impact here with this one. Could really see it going either way. The third change is they will increase the net metering cap from 500 kW to 1 megawatt. Again, this is a really, really great change. Super happy to see this. So those 3 things are really good and I think really hit the original intention of the bill, which was to increase distributed generation in Iowa. Then things kind of all go wrong with this last change that Alliant has proposed. And I do want to clarify that we are only talking about Alliant Energy today. So customers of Mid-American or other RECs or municipal utilities, this does not affect you. This is just put forward by Alliant. What they're doing is they are redefining customer load. So the way it currently is and the way that it is remaining on Mid-American is that a customer load is defined as a customer's annual usage. What Alliant is doing is they're saying it was their max annual kW demand instead of their annual usage. So to go into a little bit about what that means, demand versus usage. So the way I like to think about it, I think a really good example of this is to think about it in terms of water. So if you need to fill a 5-gallon bucket with water and you turn on your faucet and your faucet fills it at a rate of 1 gallon per minute, it's going to take you 5 minutes, you're going to have your 5 gallons of water. So your demand in that case is 1 gallon per minute, and your consumption, your usage, is that 5 gallons of water. Alternatively, you could turn your faucet on higher. Your demand would increase. So say you're filling it at a rate of 3 gallons per minute versus 1 gallon per minute. Your demand jumped to 3, but your usage stayed the same because you're still only using that 5 gallons of water. Um, how they're actually going to play this out for customers is if they have a record of a customer's demand, they will size it based on that record of a customer's actual max demand. However, for a lot of customers, they don't record that data. So what you're going to have happen is that they're going to size it based on class load data. So basically, they're going to lump a bunch of customers into a class and then take a look at those averages, and that is how you're going to have your array size, basically. They have not yet released information on what those average annual load factors are or how they're going to calculate load limitations. There has been a lot of uproar about this. I just put a little bit of a list together here, but list of people who have petitioned against this change. So actually formally wrote into the Iowa Utilities Board and asked them to review or revise this portion of the policy. The Office of Consumer Advocate, which is the division of the Iowa Department of Justice, Environmental Law and Policy Center, Iowa Environmental Council, Sierra Club, Iowa Solar Energy Trade Association, Solar Energy Industries Association, Vote Solar, the Winneshiek Energy District, and Luther College. There's also been a petition, which I think has gathered hundreds of signatures, that has also been submitted to the IUB. However, on March 17th, the IUB ruled against these petitioners, citing for at least partially that this would allow for better data collection, which was, again, part of the purpose of their pilot program. One small win was that the IUB did rule that Alliant would need to release their average annual load factors and how they're going to calculate load limitations. So we should be seeing that Alliant has until March 31st to submit this revised tariff, where they're going to be actually showing us how they plan on calculating the max demand. What this means if you are considering solar. So basically what's going to happen is, in the past, you've seen solar arrays sized based on annual usage, so their actual energy consumption for your property or your house. Now, what's going to happen is, because the Iowa law only requires them to net meter up to 100% of a customer's load, because they've redefined the load in such a way, a lot of times you're not even going to be able to size your system based on your actual usage, but rather on class averages. And in cases where they do actually have that data on your personal demand, it is still likely that it will be significantly lower than your annual usage. So if what Alliant will allow you to qualify for net metering is not going to offset 100% of your consumption, most likely. General feedback on this that we're hearing from everyone is that this is a much less transparent and a much more complicated system for customers who are looking into solar. It's also less affordable. If you cannot offset 100% of your electric bill, but you're still facing those fixed costs of installing solar, I mean, that's really, really going to hurt your payback and how economical going solar is. I pulled out a couple of quotations from these are both from the OCA, the Officer of Consumer Advocate, which is part of the Iowa Department of Justice, that I think really summed it up, and I wanted to just read those really quick. One, it's going to lead to a significant undersizing of distributed generation facilities in many instances. And two, it's going to undermine the current net metering rule and the Iowa policy encouraging distributed generation. What is our timeline? So the IUB has stated that they intend for this tariff to become effective by April 1st, 2017. Alliant must submit the revised tariff where they detail what the annual load factors is and how they're going to be performing those load limit calculations by this Friday, which is March 31st, 2017. Back in February, February 17th, the Alliant issued a memo that they filed with the IUB that they said that the new tariff would be effective April 1st. However, the IUB still does need to approve that revised tariff once Alliant submits it on the 31st. So today, if you call into the Renewable Energy Hotline, not officially, of course, because they don't have any control over that timeline, but Alliant is telling us that May 1st is a more likely date for the tariff to be effective. We really can't say either way. The only thing that we know for sure is that a revised tariff must be submitted by the 31st. And then once the IUB approves the tariff, it will go into effect. So all of this is really going to rely on the IUB's deadline. So what can you do? So first off, if you have any concerns about this, the change will not affect anyone who currently has solar. So if you already have an interconnection agreement on file, you've already got your solar up, this is not going to affect you. You will be allowed to stay on the current policy. The other thing is any customers who have submitted an interconnection application before the tariff goes into effect will be allowed to stay under the current policy. So generally what we're recommending is if you are considering solar at all, go ahead and file an interconnection application. Reach out to an installer. I happen to know a great one, but really any installer, multiple installers, look into it right now and get an interconnection application filed because this will allow you to stay under the current policy. Once you file the application, you have 12 months to actually install the solar array and get it operational. So if you at least take this first step now, it kind of assures you at least the opportunity to have solar before this policy changes. I know personally here at Ireland and Solar, we are trying to mitigate risk as much as possible. So if anything goes wrong with interconnection applications for customers who've already signed on with us, we are allowing them to void that contract. So if they don't get this current policy, we just want to mitigate all of that risk there. Since I did just do our little elevator pitch for us, Ireland and Solar, I'm going to put up our contact information. You can reach out to us for an assessment and quote any other questions you have about these changes that might come up later or I don't adequately address now. Please reach out to us. But again, any installer, multiple installers, if you're considering solar, now is the time to act before these changes go into effect. Okay, so let's dive in to some of these questions. First up, so from Boyd, seems a step backward for Iowa in development of renewable energy compared to the rest of the world. What can be done? So unfortunately, a lot of the moment for petitions or action, I thought that the joint commenters, so those folks that I put up on the slide earlier, they did an absolutely wonderful job. I don't think anyone could have made their argument better. Unfortunately, the Iowa Utilities Board has already ruled against them. I wouldn't say that this should stop this sort of action from happening. It definitely should continue. I just don't see at this point anything changing to sort of head towards Alliant's new definition on this policy, unfortunately. Leon asks, first, will customers be able to build systems to cover 100% of their annual kilowatt hour usage? Unlikely. So because of the new way that they're defining that load, it is unlikely that you will be able to cover 100% of your annual consumption. Second, the load factor they talk about, what is it and how do you find out what yours is? This is a really wonderful question, Leon. So if you have data on it, if Alliant actually records that data, you can request it from them. However, for most customers, they don't even record that data. So instead, like I was saying earlier, it's going to be lumped into other customers in your class. They will be releasing that information on March 31st about how exactly they're going to lump customers together and what their calculations are going to look like, but otherwise I don't have any information. Third, the nameplate rating size of a system, is that based on the solar panels or the inverter? This is really, really great questions, Leon. So the IUB has ruled that is going to be based on the AC size of the system, not the DC size. So that is going to be based on the size of your inverter, not the power of your solar panels. So really, really great questions. Okay, so Gary Bechtold asks, are the Mid-American rule changes the same as Alliance? If not, why would they be different? So again, they are not the same. The reason why they can be different is because the Iowa law just defines or just requires the utilities to net meter 100% of a customer's load. Because Alliant is moving away from that traditional definition of annual energy usage as the customer's load, this is how they are allowed, I guess, to have these two different policies in effect. How is it possible that Americans can afford solar? Is having the financial funds cash an important consideration? So one of these changes this change does make solar a lot less affordable. There are some good financing options. So generally there are still options you can work towards to, and in many cases, especially right now before this change happens, your solar payment can be less than your electric bill. So those definitely do exist and they are out there. This change does make it a lot less affordable though, unfortunately. So we're probably going to see it be a lot harder for the average American to afford solar after this change goes into effect. But definitely reach out to us. We do have some good financing options available right now for taking a look at that. Okay, will this customer or will this impact current Alliant customers with a solar array? No, this will not. So if you already have an agreement with Alliant or you already have an interconnection application filed with Alliant, then this will not affect you. You will be grandfathered in and you will stay on their current policy. If this is simply based on peak load during any time of the year, the customers could simply turn all electric heaters and AC and all of their electric devices for a few minutes, get a peak load for a few minutes each year, right? Technically, yes, that would impact your peak load. However, we do run into that issue where if Alliant is not recording that data about your consumption, it's not going to make a difference because they're lumping you in with other customers. So I guess yes and no to that question. How would the Alliant formula using peak load translate to kilowatt hour? I currently have over 600 kilowatt hour excess on my net meter balance. So that, again, they're not really defining that yet. So we'll know a lot more information about that after the 31st when we actually see what those calculations look like. And again, a lot of this is not really going to be customer dependent because it's lumping a bunch of people together. So yeah, that's, again, not the best answer, but we will know more information about this after the 31st. Okay, let me run over to Facebook really quick and make sure we don't have any questions going on there. Okay, cool. That does look like everything. Well, I thank you very much for your time today coming out. I hope this was helpful. If you have any additional questions or anything else comes up, please reach out to us. Our contact information is up on the screen now, but you can email us at bebright@iowawindandsolar.com. If you visit our website, www.iowawindandsolar.com, we have a chat function, so we're happy to chat with you over that. And then you can also give us a call, 800-8080-SUN, 800-808-0786. Thanks again for your time. If you know anybody else, we're also going to be putting these webinars on tomorrow. We have another one tomorrow at lunch and then one tomorrow at 6 p.m. So if there is anyone else that you think could benefit from this, let them know. Those are still, registrations are still open for those. All right, thank you very much and have a great day.